Unshakable, the Prince of Taganrog leads his men always forward, again and again. General Hermann Recknagel. Hermann Recknagel was born on the 18th of July, 1892, in Strauchmühle, in the district of Hofgeismar. He came from a family in North Hesse, some of whose ancestors were Huguenots. As the youngest son of the family, he enjoyed a carefree childhood and youth. After graduating from school in 1913, he joined Wittich's infantry regiment, 3rd Company Kurhess, No. 83 in Kessel. With the beginning of the First World War, Recknagel was on the front line, took parts in various fights as a lieutenant, was wounded, and awarded the Iron Cross 1st and 2nd class. Under General Georg Ludwig Merke, he served in the Freikorps after war's end. In June of 1919, he was finally taken over to the Reichswehr, where he was originally a regimental adjutant in the Infantry Regiment 12 in Halberstadt. As captain, he took over a company of his regiment based in Quedlinburg, which he trained and led for many years. They were the most beautiful years of my soldier life, he once said to his relatives. When he became a major on August 1, 1934, he took over the 2nd Battalion of Infantry Regiment 54 in Glogau, Silesia. On March 1, 1937, he became a lieutenant colonel, and shortly after, regiment commander. As commander, he led the 54th Infantry Regiment in the Polish campaign of 1939. Already here, he distinguished himself as a stable fighter. But it was only in the French campaign, which gave him the chance to prove himself on the front line. Colonel since February 1940, Recknagel led his regiment through Belgium in the assault and was significantly involved in the conquest of Dunkirk. For this, Hermann Recknagel received the Knight's Cross on August 5, 1940. In the Russian campaign of 1941, Colonel Recknagel broke through the Stalin line with his regiment. On July 15th, he was wounded near Vinnytsia, Ukraine, and was returned to his regiment after his recovery. The bloody winter operations, the fight against the fierce cold, and the retreat saw him in severe crisis situations, which he mastered. On January 1, 1942, still as the rank of colonel, he took over the 111th Infantry Division. For almost 2 years, he led his unit in some of the most difficult and heaviest fighting situations, and cleaned up some of the frontline crisis. When he took over this division, which later sported the nail in its coat of arms, it was in fierce defensive battles in the industrial areas of the Donetsk Basin. Under his leadership, she kept the heavy attacks constant. On the 1st of March 1942, Hermann Recknagel became Major General and became Division Commander. The medium-statured general, with his energetic facial features and the monocle in the right eye, became a symbol for the soldiers of the division. With the beginning of the German summer offensive of 1942, the 111th stormed forward, broke through the deeply staggered Soviet positions in the Debaltsovo-Katamanovka area in mid-July, and continued the rapid persecution of the softening opponent over the Donetsk, Don, and Minsk. In a single offensive, they went through the Kalmukin steppe, and Elista was taken. The Terek crossing at Mozdok was forced. The division went into the North Caucasus, and the oil city of Melgobek was taken by storm. Hermann Recknagel had now become Der Reck for every man in the division. During these times of victory, on September 18, 1942, Colonel Otto Herfurth, commander of the 117th Infantry Regiment, and on the 10th of October, 1942, Captain Konrad Leim, battalion commander of 3rd Company, Infantry Regiment 50, were awarded the Knight's Cross. But at this exposed section of the front, in southeastern Russia, the power of the attacking thrust was over. A retreat, behind which covered over 600 kilometers, over 370 miles, in winter pursued by the enemy over the Kuma, the Don, and on to Rostov, and ended at the Meuse, east of Taganrog. In night marches, this distance had to be covered. The divisions near Terek of the 40th Panzer Corps, which had almost reached Baku, the desired objective, up to a stone-throwing range, with the units of the 370th and 50th Infantry Divisions were also regiments of the 111th Infantry Division. When withdrawing, General Major Recknagel always used the 111th Panzerjägerabteilung under the leadership of Major Friedrich Musculus. They secured the division's withdrawal. During the day, the advancing opponent was fought. During the night, Around 8 p.m., there was a departure for the march. In endless columns, the division withdrew. Behind her, standing as an iron wall, was the tank destroyers of Major Musculus. They shot the imposing enemy, that is the tank. On the 6th of January 1943, they reached Soldatu Alexandrovskoye, and then its section of the Kuma. After the departure from the Terek River, the division had a useful natural obstacle to support itself here, and the Major General took advantage of this. Above all, he wanted to secure the retreat path, and the bridges crossing the river for the still retreating divisions of the Corps, and his remnants that were still behind. Wir halten bis alles drüber ist. We hold until everything is over, was the command from Hermann Recknagel. For 3 days long, Major Musculus laid an iron bar in front of these important bridges and at the railway line running on the north bank of the Kuma, with his detachment now increased to a Kampfgruppe, which allowed for the securing of the vitally important supplies of the whole 1st Panzer Army. With his tank destroyers aided by grenadiers and pioneers from Infantry Regiment 50, Musculus fought for 3 days and nights against an enemy of overwhelming numbers. The Soviets attacked from the south and east. They were determined to tear down the important defensive position held by these few Germans. A battery of Artillery Regiment 117 was installed together with the 2nd Company Panzerjägerabteilung 111 in a swampy area close to the road to Soldatu Alexandrovskoye, a natural barrier. Favoring the German positions, when the Soviets first tried to break through here with cavalry, they were ridden. 3 times the opponent charged and was mowed down by machine gun fire. Beyond Sulka, Major General Recknagel had used the tank destroyers again. "You have to hold, Musculus," were the words he gave to the Major. With his 1st Company, the Major held the village of Mikhailovsky. His Kampfgruppe was then trapped, yet fought its way through the river to the other bank. Those who couldn't swim were passed from one hand to the next. Gradually, the Kampfgruppe retreated to the Kölner Bridge. By this, they managed to give the regiments of the 111th Infantry Division 2 days ahead of the Soviets' advance and secured the retreat of the 3rd Panzer Division. Major General Recknagel submitted Major Musculus for the Knight's Cross, which he was awarded on the 26th of February 1943. Hermann Recknagel had thus decided the race of the 1st Panzer Army against the pursuing Soviet divisions in Germany's favor. It was not until January 9th, 1943, that the bridge over the Köln was blown. Here it was Gruppenführer Paul Ebel of Grenadier Regiment 50's Pioneer Company, who went up the bridge twice amidst the heaviest fire of the enemy. The bridge had only been partially destroyed in the first blast. For this he received the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross on February 26, 1943. On the 31st of January, 1943, the greater Batesk area was reached. The next day, the march began on the Eisenstraße, the ice road, along the Sea of Azov. In the evening of February 1st, the remaining associations of the 40th Panzer Corps reached Taganrog. But the 111th lasted with its rearguard actions until February 6th at the bridges of Batesk. Here on the 5th of February, again tank destroyers with their 88mm shot at the advancing Soviet tanks and destroyed a number of them. In this defense, the 4th Panzer Army was able to reach Rostov. Only then did they too cross the bridge, move through Rostov, and set up in Taganrog for a defense. Major General Recknagel resided here in the old Tsar's town on the Sea of Azov. On the 1st of March 1943, he became Lieutenant General. Feldmarschal Erich von Manstein, who visited the division several times, finally called the division commander the Fürst von Taganrog, or Prince of Taganrog. During this period, from February to July 1943, the 111th had quiet trench warfare after the merciless winter fighting. The gaps in the individual troop formations could be filled with replacements. Captain Richard Schwamberger, commanding officer of the 3rd Company of Grenadier Regiment 117, received his Knight's Cross on April 28, 1943, for his achievements during the winter campaign. But this was not long-lasting. On the 18th of August, 1943, the enemy attacked again with a huge supremacy of tanks and infantry. Hermann Recknagel was trapped with his division and the other divisions of the 29th Army Corps along the Sea of Azov. The remainder of the 15th Luftwaffe Feld Division and the 336th Infantry Division now fought their way to the Kessel, or Encirclement. Hermann Recknagel took command of the now Gruppe Recknagel. He now led the 336th and 17th Infantry Divisions, the 15th Luftwaffe Feld Division, and also parts of 13th Panzer Division alongside his own 111th Infantry Division. Here he proved his qualities as a leader of larger troop associations. Until the 30th of August they withstood pressure from all sides. In the area of Kamishoya, Mani, Uspenskaja, the front from the east and the north had been defended. Enemy penetrations were eliminated in counterattacks. Tank groups which did break through the core hedgehog positions were knocked out with all available means and in close-quarter anti-tank combat. On the 30th of August, no less than 273 knocked-out tanks stood in front of the all-around front line of Gruppe Recknagel. The enemy advanced from the north, penetrated 50 kilometers, just over 30 miles, far west with cavalry forces, and reached behind the Sea of Azov, which could not be thwarted. Gruppe Recknagel was finally encircled. On the night of the 29th, General Recknagel gathered his commanders. "Tomorrow, all men fight, from general to the youngest man. The utmost is demanded by you. It's about life or death. Morgen kämpfen, alle vom General bis zum jüngsten Mann. Das Letzte ist abzuverlangen. Es geht ums Leben." In the radio station, the IA, First General Staff Officer, Lieutenant Colonel Franz, had an open radio message from the Russian commander of the 51st Soviet Army, Yakov Grigorovich Kreiser, with the following content. "By noon, the German General Recknagel stands in front of me as a prisoner in the Taganrog market square." But it turned out quite differently. Lieutenant General Recknagel had received the breakout order to the west. On the morning of August 30th, they launched their breakout in the direction of Mariupol, Melitopol. No one who was there will forget the moment when the general suddenly appeared in the breakthrough group and made himself heard. "Seitengewehr, Planz auf! Auf geht's!" Fix bayonets. Here we go. The Kampfgruppe of the 111th and 336th Infantry Divisions came between the Meuse and the Sea of Azov. The old fighting spirit burned up again when they stormed ahead. Everyone from general to porter charged forward. The breakthrough was achieved. The enemy could hardly oppose the resolve of this running block of German soldiers. The breakthrough onto Melitopol was successful. Russians take Taganrog. Cossacks drive halfway along coast of Azov Sea, capture 150 villages. German south line crumbles under smashing new victory. Rostov region is totally freed. By the Associated Press, London, August 30th. Taganrog fell today to a surprise Cossack cavalry and mechanized drive, which carried almost halfway along the Azov Sea coast from that Nazi anchor city of Mariupol in a 28-mile advance, Moscow announced tonight. More than 150 villages were overrun in this drive, and remnants of the Nazi troops defending Taganrog have been surrounded and are being wiped out, said the Soviet communique recorded here by the Soviet monitor. This smash, which left the entire southern German line crumbling, was one of two setbacks for the invaders during the day. About 400 miles to the north, another Soviet column hitting into the German defenses south of Bryansk advanced 6 to 13 miles and captured more than 50 other cities, the Russians said. Axis folding in Ukraine. Donetsk line cracked. Cossacks take Taganrog and new Azov Sea drive. 150 villages are captured. Soviet smash threatens Stalino. Bryansk army gains 13 miles. 5,000 Nazis killed on all fronts. The Wehrmacht Bereich announced the staring maneuver, the outbreak, in the evening report of the 1st of September 1943. Lieutenant General Recknagel was then recommended by the 29th Panzer Corps for oak leaves to his Knight's Cross, which he was awarded on the 6th of November 1943 as the 319th recipient. In the Wotanstellung, German defensive position in the Nogai Steppe, near Melitopol, in its huge orchards, the smell of bloody battles raged again in October 1943, which the 111th Infantry Division acted again as a rock in the surf and covered the retreat to the Dnieper. On the 23rd of October 1943, Melitopol fell into Soviet hands, The retreating actions were fought fiercely. The Soviets would thus be denied a quick push south into the Crimea. The Panzergruppe Hacke and his 13th Panzer Division, led by Colonel Friedrich von Hacke, prevented the quick breakthrough at this point and was awarded with the Knight's Cross on the 23rd of November, 1943. The Grenadiers of the 111th Infantry Division struggled with the courage of despair. On the 27th of October, 1943, the division only had 200 operational grenadiers. All of the division's heavy weapons were smashed. In the large bridgehead of Nikopol, the 111th Infantry Division held in Gruppe Schorne, standing like iron. On November 18, 1943, he received the following assessment from General der Artillerie Erich Brandenberger. Has left his mark on his division, down to the last man. Has repeatedly been used as a leader of a division group. Has led very well. Strong personality, which shines through everywhere, and full trust wins. Reckless personal effort. Recommendation, Commanding General. On November 29th, General der Panzertruppen Hans Valentin Hube added, Outstanding Divisional Commander, fully qualified to be Commanding General. On December 4th, 1943, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein added, Agreed. On May 13th, 1944, he received the following assessment from General Oberst Karl Adolf Hollet. Lieutenant General Recknagel, on behalf of the Commanding General of the 30th Army Corps, organized the front defense in February 1944 and March 1944, and then created a reception position for the 6th Army fighting east of the River Bug. With only weak forces at his disposal, he set up a secure front in a short time, and in tireless work formed combat-capable units again. He was characterized by excellent organizational skills, excellent troop practice, and by personal commitment. His influence on the newly formed units and the makeshift organized units brought the best material and morale success. Recknagel has once again demonstrated his suitability for the commanding general of the Army Corps. Here, on the 21st of November, 1943, Lieutenant General Hermann Recknagel received the order to hand over the division which he had kept for almost 2 years. He handed over the 111th's command to his successor, Major General Gruner. In June of 1944, Recknagel was promoted to General der Infantry. In July 1944, he took over the 42nd Army Corps in Heeresgruppe Mitte, Army Group Center. Through his skillful, agile, and determined leadership, the Corps managed several times to escape the Encirclement, which was ever threatening after the collapse of Heeresgruppe Mitte. It was partially thanks to Recknagel and his Corps that the front was consolidated in the Great Vistula Arc. For this leadership, he received on the 23rd of October, 1944, the swords to his Knight's Cross, as the 104th recipient. The personality of this general was described by one of his subordinate officers, Lieutenant Colonel Friedrich Musculus, as follows. He was an outstanding personality. I experienced that after a short speech given to an alarm unit of men on holiday from nearby divisions in the fight for Rostov. The old hands felt just as much like old Recknagel's. They attacked and they held. That's how our general still stands today before our eyes. Sometimes here, sometimes there, at the command posts of the troops, orientating, commanding, cheering. In the Kubelwagen, he drives to the front line and pulls the troops forward again. Despite all the harshness, he has impressive human traits of care, benevolence, and goodwill for the individual soldiers. After the fights, he celebrated the festivals as they fell with his Fürsten, or princes, often with his favorite march, Prinz Eugen der Edelritter. In the diary of a Obergefreiter, on the arrival of General Gruner and the departure of General Recknagel, he said this, "That was a soldier and a human being. The division won't get another one like that again soon." The last stage of the fight began, in Army Group A. The 42nd Army Corps was under General de Infantry Recknagel, between Lagoa del Zeiss and Vaiksio, north of Sandomierz. Next to it was the 48th Panzer Corps, under General of the Panzertruppe von Edelsheim. 14 Soviet rifle divisions and 2 tank corps attacked here on the 12th of January, 1945. They broke up the German front and expanded the breakthrough on both sides. Shortly before the start of the Soviet winter offensive, a former division mate had been at Recknagel's command post. Here he found the general deeply shaken. Recknagel was sad, self-critical enough to foresee the impending collapse. With the start of the Soviet winter offensive, General Recknagel fought in front of Kielce. However, he could not prevent his corps from being encircled around Kielce on the 14th of January, 1945. In General de Panzertruppe Walther K. Neering with his 24th Panzer Corps, Recknagel found reliable support. Neering helped clear a way out of the encirclement for the 42nd Corps. Only 183 miles to Berlin, Stalin, East Prussia key taken. The Germans say 101 infantry divisions and 8 large armored formations, at least 1.5 million men, have been flung into the Battle of East Prussia by the Russians. Fighting is of unparalleled fury and can be decisive, the Germans said. The Russian army has not yet brought up any reserves, according to a German military spokesman yesterday. The damaged divisions of the Corps that were still far along the Vistula had to be returned. Once General de Infantry Recknagel placed himself at the head of the divisional elements of the 88th, 168th, and 291st Infantry Divisions, with his Chief of General Staff, Lieutenant Colonel Drobich Vakta. He stormed forward the night of January 23, 1945. In this storm, where elements of these divisions succeeded in breaking out with aid of the 29th Panzer Corps, the general and his Chief of Staff fell. In this way, General de Infantry Recknagel no longer experienced the collapse of Germany.